Term 3 years suspended after a hearing that lasted all afternoon in Judge John Surbeck's courtroom. I'm going to step out of the way as you can take a look across the lobby here at some of the jurors and family members of David Bassard's victims who are leaving the courtroom now after sitting in through this hearing all afternoon. The jurors came back to the courtroom and they were looking for information. They wanted to see the face of the man that they spent 4 weeks in judgment on. I'm joined right now by Steve Dillon, and Steve was one of the jurors who sat in there. Steve, it was your first chance to hear David Bassard in his own words. What were your impressions?
My initial impressions were I didn't really see the remorse. I don't think it was there. Well, I take that back. There's probably remorse, but I don't think he accepted what he has done yet.
What did you think when David Bassard said, "I'm sorry, I was driving distracted, but I will swear to this day I was not intoxicated the day of the crash"?
I didn't believe him. No. I didn't believe him the first time through. I didn't believe that statement. You know, science says he was.
Now, you were in that courtroom along with other fellow jurors. I felt a shudder go through that courtroom when he had a chance to admit he was drunk driving that day. He refused to do it. Did you feel that shudder?
Yes. We all sit up in our seats and say, this is what we've been waiting for. We wanted to hear him.
Now, the judge said, because of Indiana law, I cannot consider his denial as part of his sentence, but still he was sentenced to 16 years in prison, 3 years suspended. Do you think that was an appropriate sentence?
I've always said this, Judge Surbeck is a very wise man, very knowledgeable, and what he deemed necessary was probably the correct time.
What was the hardest part of this sentencing for you today?
Mr. and Mrs. Wells, just seeing them again.
Do you feel as a juror from Fort Wayne that your duty was done?
I felt our duty was done correctly. There's no winners or losers today. Hopefully this brings closure for me and others. No.
All right.
I don't think it's going to be done for a while.
All right. Well, that's Steve Dillon, and Steve was one of the jurors who sat in judgment here in a Fort Wayne courtroom for 4 weeks as this case was moved from Indianapolis to Fort Wayne to determine the future of David Bassard, convicted 3 weeks ago today for the 2010 drunk driving crash on Indianapolis' northeast side while he was on duty in an IMPD car that took the life of motorcyclist Eric Wells and injured 2 other people. Throughout the testimony today, his wife, Laura Bassard, begged the judge to send her husband home or shorten his prison term. She says she needs help raising their 2 daughters, young girls, who sat outside that courtroom today as their father's fate was being decided inside. Judge Surbeck said, I see remorse, but I don't see any admittance of guilt, that he admits that he was drinking the day of that crash.